This is the story of David, a 35-year-old American-Israeli soldier who thought he had seen it all. War, peace negotiations, and the everyday struggles of living in a land steeped in history and tension. Nothing could shake his resolve, but one fateful mission changed everything. An ambush left David clinically dead, or so the doctor said. During those moments, he claims he crossed over into the afterlife and witnessed truths that both terrified and transformed him. He saw the cost of division, the power of unity, and the terrifying consequences of humanity's choices. What he experienced might change how you see the world. David woke up that morning with a strange feeling in his chest, a mix of tension and calm, as if the universe were whispering to him. He was stationed near a contested border zone in Israel, a place where tensions often simmered beneath the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. His unit's mission that day was a humanitarian one, escorting medical supplies to a small village caught in the crossfire of political conflict. It seemed routine, the kind of operation David had done dozens of times. The day was hot, the air thick with dust that clung to his uniform. The convoy rumbled along the narrow dirt roads, every soldier on high alert. David sat in the lead vehicle, scanning the horizon with practiced precision. He had learned to read the land like a book. Every rock, every tree told a story. But today, something felt off. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As the convoy approached a bend in the road, the explosion came without warning. The blast flipped the lead vehicle, sending it tumbling like a toy. David's world went black. When he came to, he was pinned beneath the twisted wreckage, his body screaming in pain. Through the ringing in his ears, he could hear the chaos around him. Shouts, gunfire, the distant wail of sirens. But it was what came next that would change him forever. The medics worked furiously to free David from the wreckage, their voices tense as they assessed his injuries. "We're losing him," one of them shouted. David could feel his strength slipping away like sand through his fingers. His vision blurred, his breath came in shallow gasps, and then, nothing. When David's heart stopped, it felt like falling into a deep, endless void. But then, just as suddenly, he found himself standing in a place that defied description. It wasn't dark or light. It was something beyond human understanding. He was no longer in pain. In fact, he felt weightless, as though all the burdens of his physical body had been left behind. David looked around, trying to make sense of where he was. The air seemed to hum with energy, and the space around him shimmered with a soft, golden glow. He felt a presence, though he couldn't see anyone at first. It was as if he were being watched, not with judgment, but with a deep, compassionate understanding. For the first time in his life, David felt truly seen, as if every thought, every action, every fear he had ever carried was laid bare. Then the voice came, not from outside, but from within. "You are here to see," it said, calm and resolute. Before David could respond, his surroundings began to shift, and the vision started. David was drawn forward, not by force, but by a magnetic pull he couldn't resist. The golden glow around him began to coalesce into images, scenes from his own life. He saw himself as a young boy in America, playing soccer in the backyard with his brothers. He saw the day he moved to Israel, full of hope and determination to make a difference. He saw his proudest moments, like helping a stranded family during a flood, and his regrets, like the times he turned a blind eye to suffering because it wasn't his problem. The visions expanded, showing David things he had never seen before. He saw people he had met only briefly, but whose lives had been touched by his actions. He saw the pain in the eyes of a young boy whose family had been displaced by war, a boy David had walked past without offering help. The weight of these moments hit him like a physical blow. And then the figure appeared. It wasn't a man or a woman, not in the way humans understand, but a being of light and energy. The figure radiated love, yet its presence carried an undeniable gravity. "You must understand," it said, its voice resonating in David's very soul. Your actions, your choices, they ripple through the world in ways you cannot see. The figure led David to a place that seemed to exist outside of time, a vast expanse where he could see the interconnectedness of all things. This is the truth, the figure said, gesturing toward the shifting light that surrounded them. In it, David saw threads of energy stretching between people, communities, and nations. Every action, every word, every thought sent ripples along these threads, influencing countless lives. David was shown the cost of division. He saw scenes of conflict, not just in Israel, but around the world. He saw families torn apart by prejudice, communities fractured by fear, and nations locked in cycles of revenge. But he also saw moments of unity, people coming together to help one another, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The light shifted to show him what was possible when humanity chose love over fear. The figure's voice echoed around him. The power to create or destroy lies within each of you. The choice is yours. The light shifted again, this time focusing on Israel, the land David had come to love and protect. He saw its history unfold before him, the triumphs, the tragedies, and the ongoing struggles. He saw scenes of political tension, families grieving the loss of loved ones, and communities divided by fear and misunderstanding. But then he saw something different. He saw moments of hope. Leaders from different backgrounds sitting together in honest dialogue, children from diverse communities playing side by side, and neighbors helping each other rebuild after a storm. These were glimpses of what could be if the people of Israel chose to work together instead of against each other. The figure turned to David. "This is your home," it said. "It is both fragile and resilient. What you do here matters, not just for Israel, but for the world." David felt a deep sense of responsibility. He realized that the challenges Israel faced were not just political or military. They were deeply human. The path forward required compassion, understanding, and a willingness to see others not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters. As the visions unfolded, David was shown the pivotal role of leadership in shaping the future of Israel. The light coalesced into scenes of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressing the nation during times of crisis. David could feel the weight of the decisions Netanyahu faced, balancing the security of Israel with the need for diplomacy, navigating internal political divides, and fostering innovation while addressing deep societal inequalities. The figure spoke, its tone firm but compassionate. Leaders carry the dreams and burdens of their people, but they are not infallible. Their choices ripple through generations. David saw moments where Netanyahu's leadership brought hope, such as fostering groundbreaking peace agreements and supporting Israel's technological advancements. But he also witnessed the polarizing effects of political decisions, the strain on communities, and the voices of those who felt unheard. It became clear to David that no leader alone could secure a lasting future for Israel. The people themselves had to play a part. Leadership begins with listening, the figure said. The strength of a nation is not in its walls, but in its willingness to unite for a common purpose. David felt a surge of understanding. He realized that while leaders like Netanyahu held immense power, their success depended on the collective will of the people to choose hope, compassion, and resilience over fear and division. The light shifted again, showing David the far-reaching consequences of conflict. He was taken to a small village on the border of Israel, where he saw families living in constant fear of rockets and raids. Their homes were fortified, their children grew up knowing the sounds of sirens, and their lives were shaped by the uncertainty of survival. But then, the vision expanded, revealing another village on the other side of the border. These families faced similar fears, their days consumed by the same struggles. David was struck by the parallels. These weren't just two sides of a conflict. They were mirrors of each other, both yearning for peace but trapped by cycles of violence and mistrust. The figure's voice resonated around him. Fear breeds division. Division breeds conflict. But courage, the courage to see each other's humanity, breaks the cycle. David saw glimpses of what could happen if the cycle continued. More lives lost, more families broken, and the potential for peace slipping further away. But he also saw the power of small acts of kindness, an Israeli farmer sharing water resources with a Palestinian neighbor, a joint team of medics saving lives regardless of borders. These acts, though small, carried the potential to heal. David was then shown the toll of division within Israel itself. The light revealed scenes of protests, communities clashing over ideological differences, and families divided by politics and faith. David felt the weight of these divisions, not as an outsider, but as someone deeply embedded in the fabric of this society. The figure gestured toward the images. Division is a wound that festers when ignored. It weakens the strong, isolates the vulnerable, and blinds the hopeful. David saw the strain on Israel's identity as a melting pot of cultures, faiths, and histories. He realized that these differences, while challenging, were also its greatest strength. He witnessed moments of unity, Jews, Christians, and Muslims working together to rebuild a school, artists from diverse backgrounds creating murals of hope in city streets. The figure's voice softened. The strength of Israel lies in its ability to embrace its diversity, not fear it. True unity does not erase differences, it celebrates them. David felt a profound shift in his understanding. He realized that the divisions he had accepted as inevitable were, in fact, choices, and choices could be changed. The light brightened, and David was shown a vision of what Israel could become. He saw a thriving nation where innovation flourished, where renewable energy projects lit up entire regions, and where agriculture transformed deserts into fertile land. He saw hospitals that welcomed patients from all backgrounds, classrooms where children learned about their shared humanity, and bustling markets where people of different faiths exchanged goods and stories. But these images were not without challenges. David saw the tireless work it took to build trust, the sacrifices required to prioritize long-term peace over short-term gains, and the courage needed to confront deep-seated prejudices. Yet the hope and determination in the faces of the people stood out. This is the potential within Israel, the figure said, a beacon of resilience, innovation, and unity. But it is not guaranteed. It requires a collective commitment to rise above fear and embrace hope. David felt a swell of pride for his homeland, but also a deep responsibility. He understood that the future of Israel wasn't just in the hands of its leaders. It was in the hearts of every citizen. The next vision showed David places of worship across Israel, synagogues, mosques, churches, each filled with people praying for peace and guidance. The light shifted to scenes of interfaith gatherings, where leaders from different religions stood side by side, calling for compassion and understanding. Faith is a bridge, the figure said, but it can also be a wall. It depends on how it is used. David saw the transformative power of faith when it was rooted in love and action. He saw a rabbi and an imam planting trees together in a community garden, their shared work inspiring others to join. He saw faith leaders speaking out against hate, their words calming tensions in divided neighborhoods. The figure turned to David. True faith uplifts. It does not divide. It heals the soul of a nation. David felt his own faith deepen, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a guiding force for kindness, justice, and unity. He realized that faith, when wielded with humility, could be a powerful tool for healing, not just for individuals, but for entire societies. As David continued his journey through the afterlife, the figure brought him to a place filled with images of people David had wronged, intentionally or unintentionally. He saw the face of an old friend he had fallen out with over a misunderstanding, a young child he had ignored during a humanitarian mission, and even the sorrowful eyes of an enemy combatant whose life had been forever altered by conflict. These are not merely memories, the figure said. They are wounds, yours and theirs. Forgiveness is the salve that heals them. David was struck by the weight of these encounters. He felt the pain of each person, not as an accusation, but as a reminder of his shared humanity with them. He saw the ripple effect of his actions, how a moment of anger or indifference could cause suffering that spread far beyond what he had imagined. Then, the figure showed him something remarkable. One by one, the faces softened, their expressions transforming from pain to peace. "Forgiveness begins with understanding," the figure said. "It is not weakness, it is strength." David realized that forgiveness wasn't about absolving others for their actions. It was about releasing himself from the chains of anger and regret. He felt a lightness in his soul as he resolved to seek forgiveness and offer it freely in his life. The light shifted again, and David was shown visions of the United States, the country where he had spent his formative years. He saw America as both a beacon of hope and a land struggling with its own divisions. Scenes of innovation, charity, and resilience were juxtaposed with images of political discord, racial tensions, and communities grappling with inequality. The figure's voice was steady. America's influence is vast, but its responsibility is even greater. Its choices do not stop at its borders. They ripple across the world. David was shown how America's partnership with Israel had shaped the region, both positively and negatively. He saw how mutual support had bolstered Israel's security and technological advancements, but he also saw moments where mistrust and political maneuvering had sown seeds of discord. Then, the vision took a hopeful turn. David saw American and Israeli scientists collaborating on groundbreaking medical research, farmers exchanging techniques to combat climate change, and leaders from both nations working together to broker peace agreements. The figure emphasized the importance of shared values and genuine dialogue between nations. America's role, the figure said, is not to dominate, but to inspire, to be a partner in building a world where unity triumphs over division. David's next vision was of leadership, not just in Israel or America, but across the world. He saw leaders stepping forward in times of crisis, their decisions shaped not by fear or greed, but by compassion and wisdom. These were leaders who listened to their people, who sought advice from diverse voices, and who made choices that prioritized the greater good over personal gain. The figure showed David a striking image, a leader standing before a divided crowd, speaking words of reconciliation that calmed their anger and reignited their hope. "This is the power of leadership when it is rooted in love," the figure said. "It can build bridges where none seemed possible." David also saw the consequences of failed leadership, nations torn apart by corruption, communities left to fend for themselves, and people losing faith in their institutions. But even in these dark moments, he saw glimmers of hope. Grassroots leaders rising to fill the void, ordinary citizens stepping up to guide their neighbors. The vision left David with a profound respect for the responsibility of leadership, and he resolved to embody those principles in his own life, no matter the scale. The next lesson David received was deceptively simple: the power of small acts of kindness. The figure showed him moments from his own life where a kind word or a helping hand had made a difference. Moments David had barely noticed at the time, but that had left lasting impressions on others. In one vision, David saw himself offering a bottle of water to a stranded traveler. The traveler, in turn, helped someone else, creating a chain of kindness that rippled far beyond what David could have imagined. "No act of kindness is too small," the figure said. "Each one is a seed, and its harvest can be greater than you know." David was also shown moments he had missed, opportunities to help that he had ignored in the business of his duties. These missed chances weighed on him, but the figure offered hope. "It is never too late to begin," it said. "Every day is a new opportunity to choose kindness." David left this vision with a renewed commitment to mindfulness and compassion, understanding that even the smallest gestures could change lives. The next vision showed David the consequences of complacency. What could happen if people stopped working toward unity, justice, and preservation? The golden light dimmed, and he saw barren landscapes where thriving fields had once been. Communities that had once worked together now stood divided, their streets empty of the laughter and cooperation he had witnessed earlier. Progress is fragile, the figure said. It must be nurtured, or it will fade. David was shown the aftermath of neglect: crumbling relationships, families fractured by old resentments, and nations sliding back into cycles of mistrust and conflict. He saw leaders turning a blind eye to injustices, choosing comfort over courage. These images filled him with a deep sadness. But the figure's tone was not without hope. The future is not written, it said. Every choice matters. Every action shapes the path ahead. Complacency is a choice, but so is vigilance. David understood the gravity of this message. Progress wasn't about one-time actions or grand gestures. It was about the everyday commitment to growth, understanding, and compassion. He resolved to stay vigilant, to remind himself and others that the work of healing and unity is never finished. The light brightened once more, and David found himself witnessing scenes of global collaboration. He saw scientists from Israel and neighboring countries working side by side on renewable energy projects, their innovations bringing power and clean water to remote communities. He saw international humanitarian efforts that transcended borders, with people from different nations coming together to rebuild cities after natural disasters. This is the power of unity, the figure said. When humanity chooses connection over division, the impossible becomes possible. David also saw the challenges of achieving such unity: diplomatic hurdles, cultural misunderstandings, and the persistent shadow of past conflicts. But he also saw the determination of people who refused to let those obstacles define their future. Leaders from diverse backgrounds sat together, not as adversaries, but as collaborators, finding common ground to address global issues like hunger, climate change, and poverty. The vision left David inspired. He realized that while division might be easy, unity required courage, effort, and a willingness to see others as equals. He felt a deep responsibility to be part of this global movement toward collaboration and understanding. The figure turned to David, its presence radiating warmth and finality. "Your journey here is not over," it said. "You must return and share what you have seen." In an instant, David felt himself pulled backward, the golden light fading as the sensations of his physical body returned. He woke to the sound of monitors beeping and his name being called. His body ached, but his mind was clearer than it had ever been. He opened his eyes to see his fellow soldiers and medical staff gathered around him, relief washing over their faces. David struggled to speak at first, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he had experienced. But as he recovered, he began to share his story. At first, many were skeptical, dismissing it as the hallucinations of a man on the brink of death. But David's conviction, the clarity of his words, and the changes in his behavior began to move those around him. David's near-death experience didn't just transform him, it began to ripple through his community. He became a voice for unity, using his platform as a soldier and his dual identity as an American Israeli to bridge divides. He organized events where people of different faiths and backgrounds could come together, fostering understanding through dialogue and shared experiences. He also worked to implement the lessons he had learned about environmental stewardship. He collaborated with local farmers to adopt sustainable practices, planted trees in areas affected by deforestation, and educated young soldiers about the importance of preserving the land they were sworn to protect. David's story inspired others to reflect on their own actions and choices. People who had once harbored deep mistrust began to reach out, offering apologies and building new relationships. The ripple effect of David's transformation was undeniable. David's experience left him with a powerful message, one he shared wherever he went. We are all connected. Our choices matter, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. He urged people to embrace forgiveness, to seek understanding, and to act with compassion in their daily lives. Change doesn't start with governments or leaders, he said. It starts with you, with me, with the small deliberate choices we make every day to choose love over fear. David's story serves as a reminder that even in the face of division and despair, there is always hope. The future isn't fixed. It is shaped by the courage and kindness of those who dare to dream of a better world. His journey, though extraordinary, carries a universal truth, that we all have the power to create change, one step at a time.